Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be ranking my Oden palettes. Oden is my favorite eyeshadow palette brand. I love their packaging, I love their color stories, I love their formula, and I have eight palettes here that I want to rank for you guys. Just put an order from my favorite to my least favorite and why. If you're new here, my name is Rachel. Hello, I am a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I really enjoy playing with colorful eyeshadow and I try to upload several videos a week, naps permitting. I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing before you go. By the way, before I forget, today's eyeshadow look was filmed in an Instagram Reel / YouTube Shorts. It's either already published or will be coming live on my channel very soon, so make sure you keep an eye out for that if you want to see how I did this. But everything I'm wearing on my face will be linked below in the description box, and I will also link any of these palettes that are still available. Alright, so we're going to start at the bottom of the list and work our way up. Now, I do have to put in the caveat here, I love Oden. I think their formula is fabulous. A couple of my palettes are a little bit older, most of them are much more recent, and none of these are bad quality. Really none of them. I would recommend any of them if you truly enjoy the color story. They all perform beautifully. It's my favorite formula to work with. So really this ranking is about color story and what each palette brings to me, how I think those colors look on my skin, if it's, you know, an all-in-one palette, if I can get a complete look from it, or if it's more of a companion palette. Those are the considerations that I am looking at when I'm ranking these. So let's start at the very bottom. I think this is going to surprise a lot of people because this is quite new and it's also pretty, I would think pretty flattering for many people. And this is the Flora Story palette with Amanda from Makeup Just for Fun. I feel kind of bad putting this at the bottom because Amanda's such a sweet personality. I enjoy her channel. But let me tell you why it's at the bottom. If I can get out of the sleeve. Okay, I have found that these colors, especially like these tones right here, which is half of the palette, they look very dusty on my skin tones. Now I have blue undertones, and so these colors, they're lovely, but I think that they would probably look a little bit better on somebody who had either yellow undertones or a more pale skin tone. They look dusty on me, and I think they'd probably look dusty on someone with a deeper skin tone than I have. The shimmers are quite lovely, but they're not very special or unique. Color-wise, they're not super interesting or different. They are pretty. This multi-chrome over here is very nice. I have used this several times in other looks outside of this palette. So I think the palette's pretty. I love the combination of purples and greens. I just wish that this had a little bit more pigmentation and color payoff. Above that, I'm ranking the Planet Spirit palette. This was their collaboration with Betty Jean or Batty Bean. This palette I found to be the most challenging out of the trio. And when I say challenging, I actually mean least cohesive. I felt that this is definitely a companion. It is not a standalone palette. None of the palettes in this trio had a lot of depth. Everything was mid-tone or deep mid-tone at best. This palette, obviously super bright. It's like a circus tent, right? It's so vibrant. And this is the sort of vibrance that I wish the Flora Story palette had. But I understand the collaborators, you know, Amanda's makeup aesthetic is just more soft and subdued. It completely fits her. I'm not complaining. It's just maybe not the best fit for me. This one is quite bright, quite vibrant, really pigmented. This one is full of beautiful colors. I've ranked it at the bottom of today's video essentially because it's not an all-in-one. I can't get a complete look from this. Not really, not to my aesthetic. I have done two looks with this palette. The first time I used it off camera and I ended up bringing in a black to bring in some depth. And then the second time, I can card above for you my entire Oden playlist, everything's in there, where I did use this palette and got a complete look, but it still didn't have the depth that I wanted. It didn't have the interest that I wanted. It was okay. So for me, this is a companion. It does have an inner corner highlight, which I like. I just wish it went darker, and I wish that maybe instead of having all of these colors, we would have had maybe two fewer colors and added in darker versions or lighter versions to make more complete looks. It is a pretty palette. I've enjoyed the formula. It's not everything that I want in a palette. Next up, I'm putting the Hummingbird palette from the original Legendary Diversa collection. This is their collaboration with Tina from The Fancy Face. This palette is, again, a companion palette. For me, it's not really an all-in-one, although it can be because it does have a light and it does have depth. It's got a couple of mattes and then the rest are shimmers. It's very shimmer heavy. I prefer a matte heavy palette. This one is a little bit more a special shades kind of palette for me, but it's ranking higher than Planet Spirit because I can do more complete looks with only this palette. And I kind of prefer the shimmers in general, but this one right here, I love a lime green shimmer. They make me weak in the knees. I love a lime green shimmer, and this one is fantastic. It is one of, if not the best lime green shimmer I have in my entire collection. Beautiful, beautiful. The whole palette's lovely. Again, it's got lightness, it's got depth. I can blend out this shade or this shade with the blue. I can't really blend out these two shades with the blue. That would look muddy. And so I wish it had maybe one fewer shimmer and instead a lighter matte that would work with these two shades right here, like a light soft orange or a light soft pink, something that works with those. But aside from that, it's really nice. Moving along, the next palette in the lineup is the Saga of Freya Cat's Breath. This is one of the older palettes that I have from Udenzai. I think it's lovely. This one caught my attention the first time I saw it, and it hasn't really let go of my attention. I am always drawn to this color story, even more so in this palette than when I've seen these colors, the blue, orange, teal, in other palettes. For example, the Glamlight Frosted Flakes palette and the ColourPop in the Springs, both blue and orange teal palettes, but there's something special about this one for me. It is not too dark. I stay away from really, really dark blues on the whole because of my undertones. And there's no repetition. I felt like in both of those palettes you had a lot of blue and a lot of orange, and that was about it. Whereas this palette has one or two blues and one or two oranges, and it also has brown and it has one teal. It has the lightness, it has the depth, it has the midtones, and then it has shimmers, and the shimmers are quite interesting. The shimmer is more bronzy peach. This one's got red, peach, purpley blue flecks in a purple silver base. This one is a blue and white marble that I often dip into for an inner corner highlight. And then this one's sort of a silvery green. It's a very Regency color. I wish I knew the name of that color. It's in all the Jane Austen movies and Pride and Prejudice. Like, I love the color. I have it in my home decor everywhere. I don't know what the official name is. But anyway, this is that kind of color. It's a silver-based soft green seafoam sort of shade, and I love it. This palette is beautiful quality, and it's just kind of a joy to use. Up next, we've got the Norns palette, and this is a palette that I actually had listed for sale for quite some time. It wasn't selling, and I thought, well, why don't I do a week of, which is where I upload an entire week of videos using just one palette. I thought I'd do a week of Norns before I officially sold it. By the end of the week, I had fallen in love with it because aside from this shade and kind of this one, which I didn't really like, everything else is so beautiful, has performed beautifully. I got 4 very different looks that week, and I had ideas for more. The whole bottom row is duo or multi-chromes. It's beautiful. It's an interesting color story. This shade up here I used to think was kind of a throwaway shade, like why is it there, what is it bringing to the look, but it actually works quite nicely with this purple, with this brown, with this black, with this teal. Like, it's a good blending out shade for all the other mattes in the palette, and that's something that I wish some of these palettes that are lower in my list could have offered, something that works with the rest of the mattes to bring more of a finished result to the look. This is a really, really pretty palette. If you don't care about these 3 shades being meh, and since this palette I haven't seen that formula in any subsequent palettes, I recommend this one. It is lovely. So the number 3 and 2 spots are kind of neck and neck for me. I just put one a little bit lower, and I'll tell you why. This one actually surprises me. I am surprised by this, but in the number 3 spot I put the Hela palette between Udenzai, of course, and Angelica Nyqvist. We all know Angelica is my favorite YouTuber. I think she's great. Udenzai is my favorite brand. I think they're great. This palette, while I don't care for the front artwork, is just a delight. It's a joy to open. Look at the way the palette glows. These colors are so good. Angie knows what she is doing when creating an eyeshadow palette because it's got the lightness, it's got depth, it's got texture, it's got contrast, it's got everything that I personally want in an eyeshadow palette. I think it's beautiful. I really do. I love the green and pink color story. I like these purpley tones down here, a sparkly black. This is a multi-chrome, which can be used as a lovely face highlighter. It's awesome. And until recently, this was my number 1 Udenzai palette. The reason it's in the number 3 spot is because there are 2 or 3 shadows in here which don't really look good on my skin tone. This one, and this one. Aside from that, everything works for me. Now, this one's not amazing, but it works for me. The reason that these 3 don't work for me is because they're more yellowy based greens or browns, and with my cool blue undertones, they kind of clash. Now, that's not to say that I don't use them. I do use those shades to blend out something else. Sometimes when I'm using this palette, this is absolutely a complete look sort of palette for me. But I don't use them all the time, and I definitely don't use those as the primary color in my look. So that's the only reason that this palette is ranked a little bit lower than the number 2, because this one's actually larger than the number 2. It's just, there are 3 shades in here that I don't really use. Not really. I don't really enjoy those colors on my own skin tones. I think they make sense in the palette. They make sense on Angelica's skin and her undertones. It's a beautiful palette. It is beautiful. It's discontinued. I have seen it secondhand, of course, for a ridiculously high price. If you can get your hands on it because you like it and you can feel comfortable with the price point you find, I certainly recommend it, as I do with all of these palettes. It is beautiful. You probably guessed already, given the other palettes in this ranking video, but the number 2 spot is going to the Sea Talk palette with Lauren May Beauty. This one surprised me, and it didn't at the same time. It surprised me that it's in the number 2 spot above Hela, but like I said, there are 3 shades in Hela that not so great on me, whereas there are no shades in here that I won't use, happily use, could use over my entire eye, and it would still be beautiful. This is a cool tone palette on the whole, with the exception of this row. I look good in cool tones, I look good in cool tone neutrals, but cool tones in general. The palette is beautifully curated. This is a special, unique pop of color. This one's also kind of cool. It's a topper shade, so it doesn't show up really pink on the lid the way that it looks in the pan, but it works so beautifully with everything else. We do have warm tone colors right here if you want to take your look to a slightly different depth or warmth. It has some depth, it has lightness, it has some shimmers, some textures. This palette's beautiful, and let me tell you why it did and did not surprise me. It surprised me that it's in spot number 2 above Hela, because I've loved Hela for quite some time. It also surprised me that it ranked really above several of my other palettes, but when I consider the age and the formulas that are included and the shade range and everything, it has to go high. Like, the Norns palette has those 3 shades in the formula I don't like, so this has to be ranked higher than that sort of thing. The reason it did not surprise me is because when this trio was launched, these 3 palettes, I looked at them and I thought, well, I should just buy Sea Talk, because looking at the rest, Planet Spirit is not cohesive, it's missing some stuff, and Flora Story is just a little bit too safe, and my eyeshadow preferences don't usually go to the safe side of things. So I thought Sea Talk looks the most interesting, and I remember having conversations with some of my friends on Instagram. Sea Talk looks to be the unique one, the different one, the special one. So in hindsight, I should have just bought this one. I ended up buying all 3. I will probably sell Flora Story at some point soonish, because I'm not getting the most use out of it, and if I'm dipping in it for just that multi-chrome, I have pretty shades elsewhere, and I'd rather sell it to somebody who will really love the palette. But anyway, that's not where we are right now. In hindsight, I should have just bought this one. This is the one that I thought was truly special out of the 3, and this is obviously the one that I have ranked second in my entire collection. It's great. And of course, the number 1 spot should come as no surprise to anybody, because it's still the Merry Christmas palette from last year's holiday release. I don't regret not getting the Christmas Eve, but I do wish I had it. This palette's beautiful. There's something special about this palette. I say it, and every time I talk about it, the colors are just unique. The combination, the undertones, the way that they work together, really, really lovely. I love the formula. Again, I love the textures. This is our multi-chrome up here. It's a gold, green, pink. So pretty. I like that there's some warm stuff, there's some cool stuff, there's some really unusual things. Like, I don't generally think of, I don't know, what is this, a bubblegum pink shimmer in a Christmas palette, but it works, and it works with the other colors. You can go so many different directions with this palette, and I did an entire week of uploads with this one as well. Check my Untitled playlist. It is linked above, it is linked down below. I think this palette's fabulous. It's no surprise to anyone. There is some serious FOMO about these guys. For those of you who weren't able to get them, I'm sorry. I would be very excited if Untitled decided to re-release these palettes this coming Christmas, but I don't know. They might have something else planned. They probably do. But anyway, definitely still number 1. It is just a complete delight to play with. So that wraps up today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being with me. Remember to check the description box for today's eye look, if it's live yet, the palettes I've mentioned, other things. There's a lot in the description box. I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed this video and want to see more. And I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye!